Welcome to The Explainer. We're about to dig into this really cool, kind of hidden connection, a line that runs all the way from the ancient world straight to our digital future. And trust me, it's going to change how you think about law forever.
So what does an ancient Roman court have in common with the code running the internet? It sounds like the start of a bad joke, right? But the answer? Well, it points to this invisible force that's shaping almost everything we do. And it all comes down to rethinking what we mean by law. Because it's not just a dusty book of rules. Nope. It's a system, a structure, it's an architecture.
All right, to really get this, we got to jump in our time machine and head way back to ancient Rome. See, their legal system wasn't just a list of thou shalt nots. Far from it. It was this incredibly structured, really carefully designed process, basically an architecture for how you handle disagreements.
So check this out. If you were a Roman citizen, you couldn't just, storm into court and sue your neighbor. No way. First, you had to go through this powerful official, a magistrate called the praetor. This was stage one, and man, it was a critical gate. The praetor was the gatekeeper. He'd hear you out, and then decide if your problem was even worthy of the court's time.
And the absolute key to this whole system was something called the formula. So, if the praetor gave you the thumbs up, he'd grant you this special document. You can think of it like a key, or even better, like a piece of code. It was this very specific, pre-written legal script that literally unlocked the door to the next phase of the trial.
And here's the kicker. No formula, no case. Simple as that. Without that little document, you had zero legal standing. It was like your complaint just vanished. It didn't exist in the eyes of the court. And that is what we mean by architectural control. The state, through this one guy, was the ultimate gatekeeper of justice.
Okay, now here's where it gets really wild. Fast forward 1,000 years, a whole millennium, and over in England, a system pops up that is, well, it's remarkably similar. And get this, it wasn't a copy. They didn't dig up some old Roman law books. It's like convergent evolution, but for legal systems.
I mean, look at this. The parallels are just striking. You swap out the praetor for a chancellor, you trade the formula for something called a writ, but the fundamental architecture, it's identical. You've still got that two-stage trial, you still got regular people, in this case a jury, making the final call, and the main solution is still just money.
So what does this tell us? It's something pretty deep, actually. It shows that law isn't just about some abstract idea of right and wrong. It's about the structure, the process. It's about the architecture that dictates which rules even count, and more importantly, who gets access to them.
All right, let's hit the fast forward button again, but this time way up to the dawn of the internet. This brand new digital frontier. And to a lot of people back then, it felt totally lawless, like the Wild West, completely beyond the reach of any government.
And back in the 90s, there was this really influential judge, Frank Easterbrook, who made this now famous argument. He basically said, look, trying to create a special law of cyberspace is as silly as creating a law of the horse. I mean, think about it. We don't have separate legal systems for cars or toasters or horses, right?
His point was that the laws we already have, contract law, property law, they're general enough. They should be able to handle any new problem the internet throws at us. And you know what? It's a clever argument. But it totally missed something huge, something fundamental about cyberspace. And what's that? You guessed it. It's architecture.
And that brings us to this absolutely game-changing idea from a legal scholar named Lawrence Lessig. He came along and said, hey, everybody, the most powerful force controlling what happens in cyberspace, it's not the government, it's not Congress, it's the code itself.
See, Lessig pointed out that our behavior is basically regulated by four things. We all get the first three, right? There's the law, rules from the state. There are social norms, what your friends think is cool or not. And of course, there's the market. Prices, supply and demand. But that fourth one, architecture, that's the one we always forget. It's like this invisible force that has the most direct say in what we can and can't do.
Want to see how this architecture thing works in the real world? Okay, let's look at a classic, almost infamous example. We're talking about Robert Moses, the master builder of New York in the mid-20th century, and the parkways he designed out to the beaches on Long Island.
So Moses built these beautiful parkways, but he designed the bridges over them to be really, really low, intentionally low, so low that public buses couldn't fit underneath. Now, this was a deliberate choice. It was an architectural rule literally written in concrete. And what did it do? It effectively blocked poorer people, folks who relied on the bus, from ever getting to those public beaches. Think about that. No law was passed that said poor people can't go to the beach, but the architecture made it so. The outcome was exactly the same.
And that is exactly how it works online. The software, the hardware, the protocols, all that stuff we just call code, it creates this invisible architecture for our digital lives. It steers us, it enables us, and it puts limits on what we can do. These are rules we have to follow, not because we're afraid of getting a ticket, but because the system is literally built to work that way and no other.
Which leads us to a pretty mind-blowing realization, right? The digital architects of today, the programmers at Google, the platform designers at Meta, the engineers building these systems, they are our new lawmakers. They are our new praters. And this is happening whether we see it or not.
Let's look at a real-world example. In the UK, there was this data set called Mosaic. It was an algorithm that profiled something like 50 million adults, and it sorted them into these really questionable categories, things like disconnected youth or people from neighborhoods with a strong South Asian influence. I mean, just pure baked-in bias. And that biased code had the power to decide who got a loan, who got a job interview, who got a shot at life.
You see the parallel, right? It's honestly kind of chilling. Back in Rome, the praetor held the keys to the courthouse by giving or withholding that formula. Today's algorithms hold the keys to so much of modern life, to loans, to jobs, to information, by granting or denying access based on their code. They are the new praetors, the new gatekeepers.
And this kind of invisible regulation, it can actually start to overwrite public values, things we all just take for granted. Take copyright, for example. You could code a trusted system for digital content that is so perfectly locked down that it completely eliminates the public's right to fair use. And just like that, the code becomes a private law, a law that serves a corporation's bottom line, not the public good.
So this all leaves us with a really big, critical question for our time, doesn't it? From the Roman praetor's little formula to the massive algorithms shaping our world today, law has always been an architecture of control. But as the architecture of our digital world gets more and more powerful, who do we hold accountable? Who's responsible for the values that get embedded deep inside that code? And maybe the biggest question of all is, who are these new architects, and what kind of world are they actually building for us?